So the director who had successfully revitalized the James Bond franchise twice, once set his sights on resurrecting another hero of legend. So let's see where justice leaves its mark, with Anthony Hopkins, Antonio Banderas, and Catherine Zeta-Jones in The Mask of Zorro. In 1821, as California is about to be handed over to the Mexican government from Spain, Governor Don Rafael Montero remains defiant as he lures out the heralded rogue Zorro by threatening to execute innocent peasants. Amidst this, Zorro is aided by the young Joaquin and Alejandro Murrieta, and bestows a valued necklace upon the elder brother. Despite being humiliated by the hero in black, Montero comes to the home of Don Diego de la Vega, who he outs as Zorro. In the fight between the mortal enemies, Esperanza de la Vega is accidentally and tragically murdered. Unable to have Diego's wife as his own, Montero takes Diego's daughter to be raised as his own, while the unmasked hero is locked away in a prison as Rafael leaves for Spain. 20 years later, the brothers Murrieta are wanted men alongside the three-fingered Jack, but their thieving and conman ways come to a abrupt end when encountering the deadly Captain Harrison Love. Cornered by Love and his men, Joaquin kills himself in spite of the captain, leaving Alejandro wanting to avenge his brother. Meanwhile, Rafael Montero returns to California to both confirm that Diego de la Vega is now dead and dissuade the dons and the peasants here to buy into his claims to bring forth a new and independent future for California. Yet Diego is able to successfully escape from his imprisonment and intends to exact his revenge upon Montero. However, when he lays his eyes on his estranged and stolen daughter Elena alongside Don Rafael, everything changes for him. Soon after encountering Alejandro in town and preventing an ill-advised attack upon Captain Love, Diego finds them drawn together through their desire for vengeance. Don Diego offers to train Alejandro so they can take his revenge with honor and nobility, yet it is no simple feat to take an uneducated bandit and crafting him into taking up the mantle of Zorro. Being put through trials to prove his acumen, his greatest test is going undercover to infiltrate Don Rafael's trusted circle of aristocratic gentlemen. Here he enraptures a spirited Elena with his charm and passionate moves on the dance floor, and gains access to Montero's grand prospects for California. He will use gold mined from General Santa Anna's own land to purchase California from him, all the while exploiting and abusing innocent people. Enraged by this injustice, Alejandro is finally given the Mask of Zorro in order to thwart this plot and bring justice back to the people of California. Yet vengeance still looms on the horizon for both Alejandro Murrieta and Diego de la Vega. So The Mask of Zorro was released on July 17th of 1998, almost 80 years after the original publication debut of the character of Zorro, created by Justin McCauley, and the character was such a popular hit that the actor Douglas Fairbanks immediately took interest in it and had a feature film produced of it the following year after the debut of the character in publication, called The Mark of Zorro, and the character would constantly be readapted to other live-action mediums, over 30 productions altogether over the next several decades. But how this film comes into fruition is that it started all the way back in 1990, where co-producer John Gertz kind of pitched the idea and got it into the hands of Amblin Entertainment, Steven Spielberg's company, and brought in some different screenwriters over the course of time to develop and refine the ideas and to get things right where they wanted it. And Spielberg was very intimately involved in the entire development and the pre-production of the entire film. But the big thing is, after you got this major producer on the entire film, you got to find the right director for the whole thing, and it was such a no-brainer in a certain way to get the guy who made this fantastic revitalization of the James Bond franchise with GoldenEye by getting New Zealand filmmaker Martin Campbell involved in the whole thing. So Martin Campbell was absolutely a sharp sort of director to kind of bring in a fresh set of eyes on the entire property and figure out how to make it a fun, interesting, romantic, and sweeping adventure film that would absolutely hit all the right beats to make it a massive success. Off of a $95 million budget, the film grossed just over $250 million at the box office. Getting a lot of praise, a lot of critical reviews that are very much high up on the whole film, and obviously a complete crowd pleaser of a whole film that just hit off all the right marks. And actually the two main screenwriters of this film, Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, would actually go on to write the first four Pirates of the Caribbean films, so they very much knew their swashbuckling adventure films very, very well. But regardless of that, when you go into a Martin Campbell film, usually the best ones, he has a certain thing of bringing out the best qualities of a very good script. Bring out all the different tones that are very much at the core of the entire story. It's like GoldenEye and Mask of Zorro don't really have anything particularly in common in terms of tone or how it's approached to the different characters, but they're very fresh takes, they're very modern takes. Stuff you bring into these characters, find out what really makes them tick at the core of them, and flesh that out to the full fruition of how you can create an entire world around these characters and bring such a wonderful modern flair to how you create, with Zorro here, a very big swashbuckling epic. There's such a range of emotions to bring into such a lush story here that is told in a very clear, concise, easy to follow, and such a satisfying fashion here that all the characters have dimension and depth. They all have a purpose in the story. They all have a very focused type of way of moving forward through their emotions and their motivations. Everything comes together in such a very good, clear way of how everything comes together, and bring together all the action set pieces in such a wonderful, easy to follow type of way, where you got this wonderful cinematographer, Phil Mayo, who is such a very interesting thing that he worked very regularly with Martin Campbell. He shot GoldenEye and Casino Royale and Edge of Darkness and a few other things with Martin Campbell, but he also shot like Highlander 2, which I don't want to talk about anymore. But just the whole thing is like, he's a very good cinematographer that easily comes together and brings together such amazing looking films. Just really good, rich type of stuff. And this film absolutely just taps it right on the money here. How everything just looks so absolutely gorgeous through the entire course of this film, where it's him shooting it or it's a second unit working on all the action set pieces. Everything is such a wonderful, rich type of tapestry here, putting together all the stuff with the fabulous production design of this whole thing, where they actually took a couple like rundown haciendas and really were able to use them on the condition of restoring them back to the original beauty and constructing all these gorgeous sets. The whole thing where the lair of Zorro is created such a wonderful, realistic fashion, really wonderful ways of how they put together all these set pieces and all the different things they have going on with the production design. The dress of the whole entire film just absolutely lush and lavish. Everything comes together so well on how he photographs the entire film. Such rich type of things to create such beautiful cinematography shots here. Everything comes together in such a sweeping type of fashion here that just looks absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful, just hitting it exactly where it needs to be to create that big sense of action and adventure you want for a big summer film. He hits it off so well, and obviously Martin Campbell knowing exactly where they want to go with. Where again, Martin Campbell doesn't have a specific look or style how he puts into his films, but he adapts to the material. He finds a way to find the look that he needs for these different things and make it work so very well. Just like it just hits off such a great way. The cinematography looks absolutely wonderful. And Martin Campbell just brings all these qualities out in the script and finds the ways to tie them to such wonderful actors in the whole film. And the way they approach the entire film here, where we have Don Diego de la Vega portrayed immaculately by Anthony Hopkins, making that the whole thing is like it's a passing off from one generation to the next. It almost plays as sort of a sequel to the old films that you had before. Whereas Douglas Fairbanks or something like that, it brings it from that stories you knew before, brings it up, and passes the torch off. It's such a wonderful thing of how that weaves so well into such passing the entire legend of Zorro off to a new generation, a new era of filmmaking, stuff like that. You can move forward with the story from where you had before, and just pick up where you have a little bit of respect and tribute back to the old character you had in all these other stories and pass it off to someone else here. And again, everyone knows Anthony Hopkins is one of the finest actors that's been around for decades now. And just everything he does, it's such a distinguished quality what he brings to the film as Don Diego de la Vega. I love so much how, whether he is as Zorro there at the beginning of the whole film, or he's with his wife and his daughter there at the hacienda, or later on when he's trying to plot out his revenge, trying to examine the situation, how to move forward and dealing with Alejandro Murrieta, it's like you just see that quality, that poise that he has in the film. He carries himself with a certain pride and regal sensibility about himself. He keeps that sort of thing in line with himself. He keeps that integrity about himself, that dignity. And I like so much about that he continues to carry himself that way, to be intelligent. Hopkins just brings all these really wonderful, subtle little beats in the whole film. It just has these certain expressions where he's kind of, certainly in these moments where he's portraying the character Bernardo here, the assistant or of sorts or whatnot of Don Alejandro here, he's got these little expressions in the background where it's whatever Alejandro is doing in the foreground, or something that he's doing with something like Elena here. There's just little expressions that tell an emotional story with the character. He always remembers to continue to act whether he's in the forefront of the scene or not. Hopkins knows how to portray the character regardless of those elements. How he's portraying the scene is very much on his mind every single moment in the film. And I just like so much how he sort of tempers his vengeance with a certain sense of wisdom. A wisdom that he really does try to impart upon Alejandro, trying to see beyond his years, trying to see how the impulsiveness, the sort of emotional state that he's in, needs to be pulled back so he can focus in and do the right things and approach things in the right way. I like so much how Hopkins maintains that sensibility, that even though when he gets to the point where he needs to exact his sort of sense of revenge on Montero there, he's not getting impulsive, he's not getting fiery. He continues to have a clear, concise way of dealing with each situation, reading the situation, finding the way to best deal with things. I like so much how all this stuff comes together, and just the subtlety of emotions and stuff like that, how he brings all this stuff in, a certain sense of heart about how he is, that the film lets all these different things simmer in. How his wife gets killed and his daughter gets taken away, and you know this stuff is there, present in his mindset, in his sensibility. He doesn't have to sell it too much. It's that quiet calm that he has with the whole film. You know, it's constantly on his mind. It's in the back of his mind the entire time. And it's like, it's very piece by piece, meticulously planned out to get to the point where he can do what he needs to do to recapture and regain what he lost to some degree here. It's a wonderful performance by Anthony Hopkins. He's just absolutely phenomenal in this whole role. I like so much that he originally kind of turned down the role because he had this like excruciating back problem. But he was apparently on the film The Edge, and they kind of broke production for a week or two or something like that, and he went off and got laser surgery on his back to fix all these different things that are just plaguing him for so long that prevented him from taking on a much more action-centric role. And so once that happened, he was free to do the entire film, and just like such an important part of this whole thing. And those like kind of weird watching it now. It's like, okay, it's Zorro. He's supposed to be Spanish Mexican, but he is portrayed by an English actor, stuff like that. So it throws me off just a tad bit watching it. But it's like, Hopkins is such a fantastic piece of this entire film. He just is the core, the gravity that you have to pull all the threads into and center the entire story around. Just have that core sensibility to bring up that credibility, that sophistication in the entire film, and so much how he works so well. And the chemistry between himself and Antonio Banderas is absolutely just phenomenal. These two guys are on such a wonderful wavelength through every single scene they have. They're exactly pitch perfect on every single beat they play, flowing between humor and drama and all the different conflicts they have back and forth. All these little things is pitch perfect. It's absolutely wonderful. And with such a thing with Antonio Banderas, getting on the full film, who was very much a fan of watching Zorro stuff when he was a kid and play acting in Zorro stuff with his brother, stuff like that. Zorro had never been portrayed by an actual Spanish actor up to this point. He was the very first Spanish actor to portray this Spanish legend of literature. So it's like he had a very strong honor to fit into this role and just bring that forward and have that sort of honor and that type of way of just making that pull into his old culture there, doing it justice, and he just does a wonderful job. He does a wonderful job. Just like he's got such a diverse range to the entire film that, again, at the beginning of the whole film, he's kind of a slobbering mess. He's not an educated man. He's a thief. He's kind of unrefined, all these different things, but he's also kind of comedy in a certain way. All these different things, the very humorous type of things he's going through, but still have those emotional beats. When he has that scene after his brother kills himself in spite of Captain Harrison Love there, and you played Alejandro up kind of jokey here and there, kind of lighthearted stuff like that. When he's mourning over the necklace that Zorro gave his brother, just like that scene cements his character, it grounds him, it gives him the weight of emotion that you need moving forward in the story to understand and carry you through everything that he's going through. It's like, even though he still has these brilliant moments of comedy in the entire film, it just hits off spectacularly well, you still see the growth of the character. He goes through the arc, starts to gain these skills from Don Diego de la Vega, and tries to understand how to not become a vigilante, not become someone who just goes out there and just kills. Someone who fights for an ideal, someone who fights for the people, become Zorro, exactly. Not just a guy who goes off and gets his revenge, someone who fights for something. I love how that kind of grows and develops and still has those conflicts, still has that friction there. It's like there's certain points in time where he gets fed up with the entire thing and stuff like that. So it's like, I like there's a little bit of a conflict there. There's a little bit of something there where he still has to grow a little bit, start to develop himself a little further when he has to get the charm and the sophistication going on and starts to build further and further along. But you always have the heart that he had at the beginning of the film. Again, the diversity, what Antonio Banderas brings to the screen, just he has such a deep understanding of how to create a multifaceted and multidimensional character here that he came up through theater and did all these wonderful Spanish films before he even debuted in America. So he has such a strong body of work to build himself up as such a fantastic actor. He shows that time and again throughout the entire career, and this film just shows so much of the depth of what he can bring to such a compelling, engaging character. There's so many different facets and aspects of this character that Banderas can just paint with such a wonderful, beautiful brush across this wonderful landscape of this character here. Wonderful things to bring the physicality to the role. There's like so many of the main actors had to go through very rigorous training for swordplay or horseback riding, or Anthony Hopkins had to do whip training and became very proficient at it. All these actors were very deeply committed in a physical sense as well to realizing these characters and going through such great things, but Banderas had to do so much work with just having all this athleticism, kind of going into the character and just making sure that he was on screen as much as possible when it was really possible for it to be there and not highly dangerous for a stunt person to come over. He was there in the mask, in the thing, doing the swordplay, all these different things. They're wonderful type of stuff. That he was such a fantastic leading man here. Absolutely perfect type of stuff to just bring every quality's character forward in such a dimensional, fantastic fashion. He is just superb in this role from start to finish. Every quality that he embodies with his character is hit off on such a spectacular fashion here, including all the chemistry he has with Catherine Zeta-Jones, who does such a wonderful job in this whole film. This film really broke her through so very much, and you can see all the qualities that they gave the character Elena here, that she's not handled as dismissive or damsel in distress type of thing. She has a great sense of agency. She has a fiery passion for herself. She's very assertive in her stances about what she believes, that a lot of her viewpoints are very much against what her father wants her to believe and kind of voice and stuff like that when she's in the company of all the other dons. He kind of like, oh, woman's view on politics, how funny is that, stuff like that. He tries to brush it off, and like, she's a very adventurous spirit. And saying that he wants to kind of bottle up and kind of throw under the rug, but Alejandro, so very attractive that just like he wants to feel that he can see just her external beauty, but she has so much underneath that is so very powerful and so very attractive to what he views in her. It's wonderful stuff how she brings all these strong qualities that even in the climax of the whole film, she has a stance that she goes ahead and frees Diego de la Vega, and she goes off and she's the one trying to free all the slaves from the mine that's going to be blown to smithereens and stuff like that. They always give her something specific to do in the film. She's not just hanging around doing random nothingness. She's always have a purpose in the story. She has a very particular thing to have, whether it's stuff that warring between Montero and De La Vega, but she has a stake in that. She has something to play in these moments and something to push forward as her own solid character. Just like, I like so much how they made that a strong character here, very dimensional and very much have a substance to her that is very relevant to everything else going on in the film, and make that something stand out so very strongly. I love so much what she does that she's always been a beautiful woman, but she has such immense talent and so much great things going on that, again, she had to go through all that sort of training and stuff like that. It was very physical and so on and so forth, but she brought it all together because she's such an amazing actress, did a fantastic job of this whole role, and just continued to deliver great performance after great performance throughout the rest of her career that still goes on very strongly today. And Stewart Wilson here as Don Rafael Montero does a hell of a goddamn good job. It was he just a few years before this, he played this sleazy ass corrupt cop in Lethal Weapon 3. He did a wonderful job at it, and comes in this whole film to make a completely different style of character. Where Montero's this guy, he's very prideful, but he's also so self-centered. It's like nothing else really matters to him. He's not really doing anything in the film for anyone else. He keeps talking to the crowds and kind of appeasing to them and stuff like that. It's like when he's on the beach or he's with the Dons, like they all kind of say, like, aren't you playing to the crowd now? It's like, even though he tries to wrap it up in different packages and stuff like that, it's all for himself. He wants the adulation, he wants statues, he wants monuments put together to him, because he's been disgraced before. Everything that Zorro did to him to drive him out of California, he wants to come back and reclaim some of that. He wants to stand up tall and have that sort of sensibility that he was a great man, despite the fact that he's not doing it for anyone else. He's not trying to do it to make people independent and have them free and treat people well or give them better lives. He's abusing and manipulating and exploiting people. It's just like all these different qualities that he just drives people down, just bringing himself up. Such an interesting thing that he creates such a charismatic and compelling villain that has every quality to have great screen presence and every sensibility that you have that keeps building a little bit at a time, that is very attractive a character, but you know so much about the machinations that are moving along in his psychology here. He plays it so very, very well to create a very, very engaging villain that, like, they didn't want like a straight out villain in the film. They wanted to have someone who felt like, kind of what they say all the time is like, the best villains are the ones who think they're the heroes of the story in a certain way. And character of Don Rafael Montero doesn't really probably see himself as a villain. It's like everything he does, he has a justification for it. Stealing the gold from Santa Anna's own sort of mines and his land and stuff like that, and using it to purchase everything. Twist all these things around, and he feels completely justified to do these things because he feels like he deserves that sort of thing. He deserves to be the man held up on the pedestal and all these different things. But he's such a fantastic character portrayed by a very, very talented actor here. Stewart Wilson delivers a very solid villain for this entire film that plays so evenly against Anthony Hopkins, stands his ground so extremely well in all these scenes that have, again, that screen presence. It does such a great job with it, but Matt Letscher as Captain Harrison Love, that's a whole other level here. When you get to that scene, I'm just going to start with the whole scene where he invites Don Alejandro to the hacienda, and then you see the jar with the head and the jar with the fingers, stuff like that. This guy's a sociopath. He's like a serial killer in a certain way. It's like, the guy is scary. He's like, just like this guy, man. I love so much the entire relationship between him and Alejandro as you go along in the whole film. That, first off, the entire thing was just like the whole thing with the brother. But as it builds, and when Alejandro goes undercover as a man of class and sophistication, Love's always got this look at the corner of his eye. He doesn't trust him. Maybe he does recognize him as Murrieta. All these little things, like he never trusts him at any point in time. He always has a little bit of a suspicion about the guy. It's always building, but he's letting the things play out. He's not just outing him in some sort of way. He's letting things play out to a certain point. It's like, I love that sort of almost kind of tit for tat type of thing. There's always a little bit of a back and forth in that regard, where Don Alejandro. He's kind of insulting him on the dance floor, stuff like that, and just these little pieces of dialogue. They're so wonderfully written. They create such wonderful little banter back and forth, and these little moments of just sly accusations back and forth. It's really, really strong stuff to build that sort of animosity. You're just waiting for that moment to see these two square off towards the climax of the film. Just like, he puts together such a great character here. I just love so much what he does with Captain Harrison Love, because he's such a snake. He's such that type of thing. Like, you're just waiting again for just to get skewered by the end of the goddamn film. The worst thing you could possibly give to this guy might not even be enough, but it's so satisfying when you get both these villains back to the end of the film. Really satisfying what happens to them all together. Just like, great actors, fantastically written characters with such amazing depth to them that brings out rich characters with rich emotions and such wonderfully well-defined motivations of what's going on and the conflicts they have between one another. It's such wonderfully put together stuff. I love everything that comes together with these characters. Are just they make the film so alive and so colorful and so vibrant. They put together such an amazing cast in the whole thing, and providing such the grand and lush score for this entire film with such gorgeous and sweeping romanticism is the famed James Horner, who just delivers so much Latin flavor and flair with the entire score to capture all the sensibility of the culture and the time and the place, all these different things. It was so attracted to the whole thing that he approached Martin Campbell about doing the film himself. So it was like, hey, you really want to do something, it was like a Western or something like that, something that just had the big swashbuckling sort of old world type of quality to it and stuff like that. So he just wanted to embrace that so much after he just came off of Titanic, wanted to have something that kind of has a sense of fun and adventure, stuff like that. Really wanted to open things up. He does a wonderful quality with this whole thing. And he even brings in this like nice, really kind of cool Japanese flute to create this sort of breathy, haunting quality that really brings out a lot of mystique in the entire film when there's certain things happening a little bit more dramatic or a little bit more ominous here and there, stuff like that. He really brings in really nice places to just give a little bit of an extra sort of quality that just kind of hooks things around and kind of moves the entire score in different places here and there. He just moves the entire thing between the passion, the love, the adventure, the drama, the darkness that you kind of get into in some places here, the danger that goes on the whole film. He's magnificent. Absolutely one of the most magnificent composers out there. He just grew and grew over the years to expand his horizons, expand his talents, get into other realms, to really pull in other influences, to find other ways to bring such lush, wonderful scores to life. He did a fantastic job with Mask of Zorro here. And just, I can't imagine anyone else doing a better quality score than he put together here. Just has all the wonderful qualities you could possibly ask for. It's just absolutely brilliant stuff. Some other brilliant stuff in this whole film is just how the action just all comes together. Everything. With all the stuff with the sword fights, which is handled by one of the best sword masters in the industry, Bob Anderson. This guy worked on The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Highlander, Princess Bride, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Anytime you had one of the best sword fights in cinema in the last 40 years, he was probably involved with it somehow, some way. He even worked on Highlander the series. So a guy that could just work so regularly, he was just the man to go to get these wonderful battles choreographed out and worked out, and dealing with all the swords to kind of give the certain identities to all the different characters, stuff like that. He worked in such inspired ways to bring the dynamics of the characters and the environments that you're working with and all the different aspects of story to build into the emotion and the adventure and the danger, stuff like that goes along in these sword battles are all choreographed magnificently between himself and the stunt choreographer. And just like, you gotta talk so much about that the steamy sword duel between Elena and Zorro there, Alejandro. It's wonderful, just like that. It's so much that whole thing where we've gotten these little tastes of the two characters, hitting off these little pieces of warmth and spark and stuff like that. Just you really feel it so much between the actors there, what they're doing, and they spar so very well in this entire flirting sort of way to go back and forth in this entire thing to kind of show that she reinforces herself in the whole thing. She constantly does that to step up and show that she's not someone just picking up a sword for the first time in her life. She knows what the hell she's doing, and she's a formidable adversary in that regard. There's a playfulness there. There's a little something back and forth. It's just so beautifully well put together to see that dynamic of character and emotion and passion, stuff like that, moving back and forth, and the lighthearted qualities of the entire thing, the humor that kind of flails around here and there when you kind of have back and forth between danger and lust, stuff like that. It's beautifully well done, just expertly executed by everyone involved in the whole thing. But as you go along the whole film, the action just amplifies. You got all the fabulous horse riding, this whole thing, the stunt riding, stuff like that. And you got all the soldiers coming after Zorro there, and he's doing all the stuff, flipping and flopping back and forth between horses and doing all the stunts, jumping over the log as the thing goes along. It's all magnificent stunt work. And that's the main thing to think about with this whole thing. Just realizing, watching, it's like, there's no digital effects in this film. It's all practical stunts. It's all practical explosions. It's all practical sword fights. Some miniature work, but everything is done in camera. Might be some digital painting out of maybe some stunt performer wires here or there, but regardless, no one talks about any digital effects when you watch the documentary about this whole film on the DVD, the Blu-ray. There's none of that. It's all practical done stuff. It is extremely impressive. Everything they did with making the action of this film flow on such a magnificent level here. Marvelous type of stuff they put together with all the stuff they did, from blowing up the mine, where they actually had to blow it up like 3 different times because there was some kind of problems with the charges here and there, where like the first time the thing didn't really collapse the mine, and the second time all the charges didn't go off, but they kind of did it a third time and got everything just right. But they cut together footage from all 3 different explosions in the entire thing while they had it covered from like 7 different angles. So Martin Campbell was very pleased with how things actually happened to go down that regard to get a much bigger quality explosion going off in the whole thing. All this stuff is so wonderfully put together in this whole film, and such an interesting type of thing that you never really think about it when you have sword battles in films, that there actually is a lot of sound design involved, because in this film all the blades are aluminum. They're all just kind of like dull clanging back and forth. There's not the actual sounds of what you get with actual real like steel blades. So you had to have the sound people go in and edit together every single clang of the swords. That just blows my mind in a certain way, because that's a very meticulous type of work to make that happen. And this film did get nominated for Oscars for both Best Sound and Best Sound Editing. So that really came through extremely well, knowing that they had to do that. And it's all just perfect. It's not like the same sound effects over and over again. It's almost like a way of constructing notes musically in a certain way, to have that rhythm and all that stuff kind of clinging off in the right tones here and there to make it sound very organic, how it's coming together there, how the filmmaking comes together so well for this film, how it's all constructed with such a vision here. There's such a wonderful job just creating all these elements to make it such an absolutely satisfying, deeply entertaining type of film that has everything you could possibly want. The drama, the action, the humor, the depth of characters, and the emotional investment of everything like that, and all the qualities of just what each artist brought to the table here, where it was the actors, the director, cinematographer, the composer. Everyone put together stuff just created an overall vision that flowed so well between one another. Everything came together so absolutely well here. It's such an interesting thing that they actually did a couple of different things with the ending of the film, because the one they actually ended up with, which I think was the best option they actually came up with and executed on the best level here, where they have Alejandro and Elena, they kind of flash forward, they've got a kid now and stuff like that, and nice epilogue where they kind of has that sort of callback to when Don Diego was up there with Elena as a kid, stuff like that, telling her stories at her crib. Perfect bookend to the whole film, but kind of also wanted to have like, okay, maybe Don Diego doesn't die at the end of the film, and filmmaker said, no, we're keeping that. That's a very nice sort of denouement at the end of the film there, to have that happen there. It's just that nice final passing of the torch type of feel to it. But there was an alternate ending where Alejandro and Elena are kind of walking the slaves from the mine and stuff like that out into freedom. and they encounter General Santa Anna and his army there. And kind of the interesting thing that General Santa Anna is portrayed by Joaquim de Almeida, who portrayed Bucho in Desperado opposite Antonio Banderas. So unfortunately, his only piece of screen time in the film, despite them constantly referencing General Santa Anna through the entire course of the film, because they're stealing his gold from his own land and stuff like that to kind of pay off to get ownership of California here. Fortunately, this one piece of his screen time gets cut, but it was kind of it's a nice scene. But I can see why Tess Orange is like, it doesn't quite give us enough at the end of the film. It doesn't give us quite enough. I think the thing they went back and reshot and is actually the proper ending of the film now. I think that works absolute best. It has that nice bookend quality to the entire story here. I think it works off just on the right levels here. And just the fact that Mask of Zorro is one of those films just like, doesn't get discussed enough. But man, the film holds up perfectly. There's nothing in this film, aside from like, their constant use of like the Puma scream and stuff like that in some places, like kind of a enhancement sound effect when there's explosions, stuff like that. It's a little hokey, but everything else in this whole film, it's just perfect. And it's just as fresh and adventurous, entertaining, and enjoyable as it was when I saw this in the theater in 1998. It's a wonderful film. Anyone who has not seen it absolutely should go out and find it right the hell away, because it's so absolutely good. It's even got this kind of interesting type of thing. They have this sort of song in the whole film, whereas Mark Anthony and Tina Arena, this Australian singer or whatnot, and they compose it with James Horner. And kind of an interesting thing where it doesn't really happen outside of James Bond films, where they kind of take this sort of main title theme that's like this single they're releasing for the film and kind of weave it into the main theme of the entire score. It's very interesting how they did that, and it works off wonderfully. Like I said, the score in this film is a beautiful piece of work. It's a nice track for what it is and stuff like that. Very much a love theme. And again, I can't gush more about this film than I already have. Everything comes together when you just get to the end of this whole film. And you get that final piece of just thorough catharsis of vengeance. The stuff with Harrison Love, the flip of the sword over the head and just skewering him right through. And then Don Raphael, he gets thrown over the thing with the crate of gold and stuff like that and just smashed out in this entire ruin between the two of them. It's absolutely perfectly constructed. Perfect vengeance in the entire thing. That's couldn't be any more satisfying if you tried. I can't ask for more. And there was kind of this interesting thing where Quentin Tarantino, I guess there was a comic book of this, where he had a crossover between Django and Zorro, and he wanted to have a film at some point where Banderas came back as Zorro and had that actual crossover on film, but never materialized in any type of way. But that would be kind of interesting. But the fact that The Legend of Zorro, the sequel to this film that came out about 2005, where it's the same director, the same cinematographer, the same composer, the same two leads with Zeta-Jones and Banderas. I never saw it because I watched the trailer again. It just looks really bad. And it did not perform nearly as well. Did not get the same critical reactions. It got very much mostly negative critical reactions, a much less box office take. There's just something about this entire sequel that went right off the rails in a certain way because they changed screenwriters over to Alex Kurtzman and Roberto Orsi, where there's a whole fan fervor you can get into about these guys. I'm not going to get into it, but there's a lot of stuff that they've produced over the years that a lot of people have heavy criticisms about what they've written and stuff like that and what they've done to certain franchises. I'm not going to get into that, but I never saw that sequel. The trailer still looks bad to me. It didn't go over well, but it's a strange thing that right after Martin Campbell does Legend of Zorro, he goes right into Casino Royale and has a magnificent film to talk about there, and then there's Edge of Darkness, then there's Green Lantern, so he's a weird hit or miss type of director, but when he hits, it's one of the best things you could possibly see in the entire year that the film was released in. Between GoldenEye, between this, Casino Royale, the guy hits off on really strong levels when he has all the right elements at his disposal to create a magnificent film. So guys, let me know what you feel about The Mask of Zorro down below. I just want to hear what you guys feel about this whole film. If you love it as much as I do, what are your favorite moments from the entire film? Because there's no shortage of just really excellent pieces of scenes here and there, just wonderful pieces between the humor, the action, everything comes together beautifully. So guys, thanks so much. There's always the Patreon. If you want to contribute a little bit every month, you get a little early access to things, a little extra preview here and there. But thanks so much, guys. I very much appreciate you so deeply being involved with this channel, finding it, engaging, interacting, sharing links around, talking to us on social media. It's absolutely wonderful. Between myself, Steve, and Trent, we are hitting up, of course, to 9,000 subscribers now. It feels really goddamn good. So thanks, guys, so deeply much. Take care. Bye-bye.